All right. I'm doing this video to help you guys get started using a folded pen. If you've never done this before, um, this might be kind of helpful just to start to figure out how to do the kinds of lettering and line variation and so on that you might have seen uh, that other artists do when they're using this type of a pen. This is a folded pen. It's essentially just a piece of brass like this one, and you cut a bit off and you fold it over like a taco, and then trim the edges and do a little bit of sanding and shaping to get it to write smoothly. But but this folded pen is very simple design actually. As you dip it in, the ink stores kind of in the middle of the pen down through this bit here, and then it runs out the seam where it's connected. It writes on this edge that's opposite of the spine, and and in the way that it writes with these little parallel pieces of metal here, it's very much like the Pilot parallel pen, and it's also like what there's a type of pen called a ruling pen. Some people kind of interchange ruling pen, folded pen, but really they're actually designed differently. The ruling pen is actually two separate pieces of metal that's kind of held together with a screw, and you can adjust the width of the tip that way. The folded pen is a lot more primitive actually. It literally is just a folded piece of metal, and you just pinch and shape and adjust until it works the way you want it to. So anyway, here's our folded pen. Going to dip it some ink here, dip it in some ink, I should say, and so the basic thing that you want to do is you want to learn how to manipulate the thick lines and the thin lines. So the first bit of practice that I always encourage people to try is just to use the broad part of the tip here to get thick lines like this, and then use the tip to get thin lines. So you're actually going to roll the pen up so that you can get it up on the tip. And so a good little practice thing is to thick lines, several in a row, and then thin lines, several in a row, like this. And then you can try doing it in different directions too. Go thick lines across, thin lines across. Did you notice I changed the angle in my hand when I did that? You can try thick lines coming the other way. Again, I'm rolling this tip around in my hand to facilitate the lines that I want. It's this style of calligraphy is a little less like some of the other styles that require that you keep a consistent angle all the time, that you keep a consistent hand position all the time. This pen, you can do a bit of that if you want to, but it doesn't always work. The line that you're trying to get, you kind of have to manipulate it around. So get into a position where it's comfortable for you, and then just go for it. Now, I wanted to show you also doing some round strokes. So whatever angle this is here, you get thin lines going this way, and then you get thick lines going the opposite direction. So if you want to get the crescent shape going, you can start with the thin, go to the thick, and come back. So practicing doing some circles is kind of a good thing too, just to see if you can kind of pull that off. Do a bunch of these like this, And you're intentionally going for the thin here and the thick here when you do it that way. But you can change the angle. Instead of being sideways like this, you can be more up and down, and then your thick goes across the top and the bottom. So it's just a choice that you would make depending on how you want the letters to look. I do both. You can try doing other letter shapes like S. It's kind of interesting how the folded pen almost takes on kind of a brush type feel to it. The way that it lays the ink down. It's kind of similar to using a flat brush. Yeah, some more strokes. One of the things that we like to do is to go thick on a downstroke and then thin on an up, thick on a down, thin on an up. Another thing to practice right here. Now you can lift in between each stroke as you reposition your pen, or you can do it all in one stroke. So you just kind of roll it back and forth without lifting. Okay, it takes some practice to get that going, but as you work with it, the more you work with it, the better it gets. Do a couple more of those so that you can watch the rolling of the pen. You might be interested in what kind of ink this is too. This is Walnut ink. You buy it in a dry powder form, and then you mix it with hot water, and essentially you brew it like coffee. And you can add more powder for a darker color or less powder for a lighter color, but I just love the shading of this, the way that it goes back and forth between, you can see that there, between the dark and the light. It's just way fun. All right, now let's work on a couple of lettering styles really quickly here. One of the basic ones that you might want to do would be kind of a slanted, I'll call it italic, but it's not technically italic, kind of a slanted sideways thing where you're going to go with the thick strokes down, thin strokes up. I do this lettering style pretty often. It's very readable. It's fun. You can get a lot of style variation going along with it too. But this one is basically going to be thick on the downstrokes and then thinner on the upstrokes. And it's just a matter of practicing that so that you can get kind of that look going. Now, because you can roll the pen around in your hand, you can actually do a thick stroke in every direction if you want to. So if you want to get kind of more of a block kind of thing going, that's also possible. Takes more changes. I don't ever practice doing this style here, so I'm sorry it's kind of wonky looking. But it's possible if this is what you want to do. Well, it's looking a little better. I'm kind of more interested in the wide, thin sort of strokes. That's my favorite. So this is the slanted one, but then we've also got kind of the more cartoon fun sort of thing, where you're going to hold the pen straight up and down, and all of your vertical strokes are thin. And then I usually pick just one stroke for this style that I'm going to do here. I'll show you. I use one stroke out of all the strokes in the letter to make it thick, and the rest of them are all thin. So an A might look like this, or maybe an A would look like this. A B could look like this, and a C like this. And it just feels fun. If you have ever seen this type of calligraphy, like on greeting cards and stuff like that, they have a good time just getting well, they're kind of bouncy and fun letters. You can do a little Disney dot on your eye. It's just playful. That's what I like about it. This one here. I do greetings like that pretty often. Now you can also do, I'll grab a piece of paper here. You can also change the thick style so that the thick part is on a fixed place. This is kind of fun too. So let's say that whatever the vertical or close to vertical line is that's nearest to the left, we're just going to do that thick and then everything else thin. So then the letters come out kind of like this. And if you're not figuring it out so far, this is kind of a looser design concept for letters than what you get with some of the more formalized established, we'll call it, letter styles that have been around for centuries. You can have a little bit more fun with this, kind of do your own variations with the thick and the thin like that. It's kind of interesting too, because even when you take a letter that has lots of strokes in it, like an M, let's say, do the M thick on one side, all the other strokes thin, and it still kind of has a look to it that's cool. Now, going on with the same concept of the vertical and horizontal lines being, oh, and I should say something about that. This bit of splatter right here is actually kind of cool too, because it's the unpredictable part of using your folded pen, sometimes the ink just sort of splatters or whatever, and you just kind of go with it. This pen is pretty controlled because there's not a lot of vibration in the parallel parts of the metal. So it writes pretty consistently, and this is very smooth paper too, so that's consistent. But if you use paper that has a little more tooth on it, and then maybe you have a pen that's designed with a little bit more flappiness to it, you can really get a lot of splatter. That's pretty fun. Anyway, back to our vertical and horizontal thing. You can get kind of that cowboy look to your letters also if you do thick lines, thick serifs across the top, and then thin lines in between. So it might look something like this. Get your cowboy letters going. Yeah, just for fun. Obviously, I'm doing all of this quickly with no guidelines on the tops and the bottoms, so I'm just kind of eyeballing it. But if you take the time to put guidelines in pencil, then you can actually get this pretty tight if you want to get your letters to be really consistent. Just takes practice. I love taking variations on styles of letters too. So we can do a G like this, but we can also go with the kind of loopy sort of G, which is fun too. So almost any style that you see that's done with other kinds of pens, you can do a variation of it with your folded pen. The folded pen is not going to be the best pen to try to do, broad tip sort of calligraphy because it's hard to get the angle right. I did make this pen here. I should show you. This pen was designed in an oblique basically so that it can get kind of the same sort of angle. Let's see if I can make this work for us. Get the same kind of angle as a broad pen would be. So if you want to do, black letter style writing, you can kind of get an approximation of it, but it's always going to have kind of more of a rough and tumble sort of look. It's just not anywhere near as consistent to use for this style of lettering as it is to use a real broad pen. But, it's fun. So I will probably use this for projects just because it's interesting. Little less programmed and a little more. Camera turned off there for a minute. I'm not sure what that was about. But anyway, here's that black style letter we were talking about before with the pen that's been intentionally tried to cut to be more like a broad pen would be. Other kinds of writing styles that you can simulate. You can almost get kind of a flex pen thing going. more of a copper plate kind of a feel, but that's really doing a lot of rocking around. So I'll see if I can kind of get close to that. I'm going to start off here. That's kind of. It's really not the right tool for this job, but you can come up with something kind of fun if you want to. The pen flows really smoothly, so if you decide you want to do some scrolly kind of stuff, you can do that pretty easily too. But there we go. So, folded pens, mostly about learning how to manipulate the wide and the thin, and just experimenting with it until you start to come up with results that you like. I can say that I've been doing calligraphy since I was in middle school, and my dad bought me a set of speedball nibs, all different ones. I have the broad nibs and the square ones and the round ones and the oval ones, and I played with all of them for a long time. And I had my speedball lettering guide to learn how to do the different styles and stuff. And I still have that set of pens. It's kind of fun. They last for a really long time. And but then I started watching people doing different kinds of calligraphy with different pens, and it got me really excited about these folded pens when I first saw them. And so I learned how to make it out of a soda can first. It's pretty thin, pretty easy to work with. If you cut up a soda can and fold it over, you can just fold it with your fingers, and you can cut it with scissors and get your shapes going and stuff. They don't last very long. The can pens, they're not quite as robust as it would need for doing a lot of writing. And so that's when I got interested in making them out of brass. At one point, I bought a folded pen from somebody that makes them, and their pen was made out of steel and very consistent with the way that it worked. But I, in the end, liked the brass one better because the steel one rusts, and so you have to really be careful to keep it really dry whenever you store it and stuff like that. The brass ones actually feel smoother on the paper. Making the pen itself, it really doesn't take a lot of special tools. I just have a simple pair of tin snips and some sandpaper, and mostly I fold all of it, maybe with some needle nose plier. Man, I can't even talk today. Needle nose pliers to do the shaping, but you can do a lot of the shaping with just your fingers, squeezing it and so on. But anyway, it's fun to make the pens. It's fun to use the pens. Here's some ideas of lettering and stuff. Hopefully this has been an informative little video. So I will talk to you later.